Here with this week's episode of Fearless Flight Live. Welcome back. This is, of course, the place you want to be if you have a fear of flying, if you know somebody who has a fear of flying, or if you just like to talk airplanes and whatever else comes up there. We want to, forgot to check the Facebook to see where we're up to, but we're pushing dangerously close to the 800 mark. And it's really, really cool to watch that many people, because it wasn't, how long ago, I don't know, it seems like it wasn't too long ago that Dieter said, hey, Ron, we're just about to break 200. So, and I saw the graph last week. It's like, how it goes up exponentially there. So thanks for everybody that's checked in there. I do want to comment, want to do one thing that for sure, and that is I want to show people. We'll go over to the online webinar or the 101 online Dieter eventually, and we'll open that up. I'm going to just show people what it looks like and how to log in. We had a Facebook question about how do I get to the webinar, and I want to make sure that they do that. Well, as we speak, cool. So we can do that if you want. I'm gonna drop off 1 second and see if I can do this without embarrassing myself. And if you want to, what I want to do is just show them when they click on this, the 101, and when they go in there and where it forks in the road, they can pick one thing to register for the class here, and another one if they want to, and we can put the link in the notes there as well, Dieter. So I'll be back in just a couple of minutes, and
or I can just try and share it right from the browser here.
Okay, so I'll be back in a minute.
All right. Well, so we don't have our charming flight attendant Diane with us today, but we do have you, Captain Eric. So, tell us, was there anything in aviation this past week that tickled your fancy?
I saw nothing, but I had to tell the people, and Dieter may not even be aware of this. So we had a class recently, and as I mentioned on TV, my wife is struggling with ovarian cancer, so I'm exceptionally paranoid. And I found out one of the people in the class was unvaccinated, and that person had their mask down for a while, and I was at least behind them in the cockpit, but it freaked me out so badly. I mean, I was sobbing all the way home. Called Ron, I could barely function. Yeah. And he gave me some extremely, extremely heartfelt texts with only a very small invoice. And I'm kind of over it now. My trauma ER nurse gals talked me out of it. And I don't appear to be symptomatic of the bad. And I'm shot up and had it last year, but I'm just so paranoid about that.
Of course.
And so when all of our people call in now and say, I'm really afraid of a panic attack or I've had an anxiety attack, it wasn't over the flying, but I can tell you now, I could hardly function. I could not force another rational thought through my head. I was so freaked out, wondering if I should sleep upstairs or what the deal. Unfortunately, one of the nurses was over here. All my wife's A-teams are ex-medical professionals, trauma nurses, and they go, no, Eric, you're smoking too much pot. It's making you paranoid. I don't smoke any pot, but that's what they said.
Lay off the soft medication.
Yeah, the pot's making you paranoid. It's not helping your vision either with those freaking glasses. But I mean, I came in the door and I was a mess. And so when you guys say that, I'm afraid of that. Now, instead of being empathetic, I can be empathetic and say, I totally get it.
Yeah. It's
like telling a guy that's in the electric chair, hey, you know what? This is really going to hurt. And he might believe you, but until you get the juice, you don't get how much it really does hurt. And it really did. I mean, it scared me half to death.
Well, the reality is, and you mentioned that anxiety is anxiety, right?
Right.
And so what the object of our attention is ultimately really secondary. And, you hear us often say, here at Fearless Flight, that the pain in your brain is not about the plane. And that's not just a cute play on words. It really points to something far deeper. And I would actually love if you could, let us, other than that, because I can relate to you on a much deeper level, because we're flying, my wife and I, we're flying over to Austria probably mid-September, because, my dad got hit with some pretty stark, news regarding his health. And there's 3 things coming together: stage 3 prostate cancer, stage 3 COPD, and leukemia, all in one, 6 months period. And so, it is really, when people have these family situations and then they can't fly because they can't get on a plane, the agony is not just doubled, it's exponential, right? Because now the brain circles like all the time. And
it's all in the receiver brain. And it's very hard to think your way out of it.
And that's actually, it's almost, I would really say the only way you think your way out of it is if you are previously enlightened. For all us mere mortals, we got to come back and understand that there are 2 systems in our brain. And the first system we call the sympathetic nervous system. Most of us are, living in that system most of the day. But then there's the parasympathetic nervous system, and that is really your rest, heal, digest mode. And in that mode, we can now retrain, and Ron talks about the amygdala a lot, about that smoke detector. And once we can send back a signal that says to the, hey, it's okay, and then your anxiety is going to come down. And then you use your thinking again, right, to establish a better protocol, right? Or as we say here, you tell yourself a better story.
Yeah.
So
I told Dieter about my completely out of control panic attack from last Tuesday night. So like I said, now when the people tell us about that, I can say, I get it. And it doesn't matter what it's over. If you get in that, as one of the internal medicine guys said, a loop of fury that and without your coping mechanisms, you can, it's very difficult to get out of that mess.
I think that's called taking one for the team. Eric, isn't it? Should I share the video?
The video? No, not unless you want to live in the same house.
There's incriminating video.
No, there's no video. I will say on a funnier plane or something to help me. I'm in my mind, I'm a pilot, but I want to be a writer, and I like to dive a lot. And I talked to my dive master buddy a week or so ago, a guy that owns a shop. I said, how was your trip? And I said, boy, I wish I had this at work. He goes, it was trip. And I go, oh, you better tell me. So they went down to a Caribbean island with a group, and they requested that people be vaccinated since you're in close contact, all that, but you can't ask or any of that kind of stuff because of HIPAA rules. They get to the island, and the island authorities separate them into lines, and there's 5 people there that have no shots because they don't have the paperwork. So they get tested and they get admitted, and fine, they get down there, and an initial karmic slap they got. And I'm trying to get a photo for this. We'll post it next week. 2 of the on-shot people's luggage showed up destroyed by the airline. And when I mean destroyed, it looked like a Cape buffalo and a rhino were fighting over the bags, and nobody would give it up. The only reason they could identify it as a bag wasn't DNA, was because the woman said, I have kind of a floral print deal. So there's this pile of floral print detritus on the floor, still not identifiable as a bag, with all of their stuff utterly destroyed. So they had to go buy swimsuits, t-shirts, rent diving gear. Okay, fine. Getting ready to go. The karma isn't over yet. They tested positive, and so they couldn't leave the island. So my dive shop operator buddy goes, thank God my wife wasn't with me that day. She was actually feeling a little bit cold, ear plugged up, didn't want to dive, which turned out to be just a little bit cold, ear plugged up, didn't want to dive. He's riding around the island with him in these beat up trucks. with open windows and the air blowing through it like a tornado. That's how you do it in Bonaire. It's shore diving. So you're driving around these wrecked pickups with these two guys that had tested positive the whole time. He tested negative there, negative PCR, negative when he got back, negative, negative, negative. So the vaccine actually works. And the two miscreants with the destroyed bag are still on the island waiting to be released from quarantine from the Slammer Hotel to come back there in their purchased t-shirts and shorts so they can start filing a luggage claim and see if they can get back.
Oh my goodness.
That's the short version.
Yes. Guess what? We got a caller here. And this
I better shut up. You should have told me to shut up.
Yes. So so let me terminate talk. Right.
All right.
Julia, are you there?
Oh, he's here.
Julia, can you hear me? Well,
Julia, press *6 if you're there. Press *6 on your
if
phone.
you can hear us, press *6. And now it should. Well,
and our screen is called muted again.
There we go. Let's see if we can ask to unmute. That should prompt. Julia, if you can hear us, please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I was just talking to her.
Hello.
There you go. Yay!
Oh, yay! All right. How are
Oh,
you?
you can hear me?
We
Yes,
can hear you.
Wonderful.
You are
Wonderful. I'm so glad I was able to connect.
all right. So let me just for a second here, and then I'll bring you in here. Okay. We just want to pose a question to our audience. And we're looking for some more participation and some calls here tonight. But imagine you had just had a wonderful time vacationing, seeing the Great West, including our fabulous Grand Canyon out here. And you were all ready to ride on your Amtrak home, and you got to the station and you were in for a big surprise. So, Yulia, can you relate to that?
Yes, I can certainly relate to that. So we flew out west from New York, and my flight was okay. I was very nervous before that flight, but that flight was fine. And I planned to go back home. I decided mid-vacation that I will go back home on Amtrak.
Right.
Because it's for a few reasons. So first reason, of course, I will avoid flying, but not only that, I wanted to see countries because that Amtrak route, train number 6, California Zephyr, I think the name of it, is it takes very scenic route all throughout the country.
Yep.
So after the train.
Everybody should see the country once from Amtrak. I'm a fan of that. So go on.
Right. So after the train was late for almost 11 hours, the train was canceled. They canceled the train altogether. Now, at that point, I didn't have a luxury of time to wait for another train, and that train comes only once every 24 hours. So I really needed to go to airport and fly out of Salt Lake City to New York.
So what was what was the urgency to get back that you couldn't wait on the train?
I needed to go back to work.
Okay.
I needed to go back to work. Yes. So if I would go on that train, I would be fine. But wait another 24 hours, it would put me a whole day later than I need to be in New York for work.
Right.
So first of all, I was exhausted waiting for the train in the hotel and then at the train station, constantly updating the Amtrak's page, trying to see where the train is at, calling Amtrak many times. And when you call Amtrak, you have to be online for 30, 40 minutes, then they call you back. So it's a mess. So I was very frustrated and extremely tired. And I was not ready to fly at all that day. I was not ready to fly. So I came back to the hotel. I drove myself crazy between between choices where should I should I take Amtrak or should I take Greyhound, or I was looking at some options to carpool through the country. But anyway, all of those options would put me late being at work.
So is it safe to
and
say,
finally,
is it safe to say that flying was not at the top of your list?
Flying was not at the top of my list because I didn't prepare myself to fly.
Got it.
At all. Yes. So and then finally I fell asleep in the middle of the night. I was like, I'm just going to sleep because I'm so stressed out and I'm going to figure this out in the morning. I woke up in the morning so anxious and so shaking. And I just started to Google. I don't even remember how I found Ron in all that mess, but I managed to find. I called him, and he called me back, and he made such a difference. After talking to him for more than an hour, and of course it was the best money that I spent in my life, I'll tell you right there. He put me in such ease that I cannot put in words how thankful I am to him. I probably would still be in Salt Lake City a week later. So all of this happened a week ago. I guarantee you I would still be there. And after I spoke with him, he gave me, of course, so many advices. So many wonderful thoughts to put in my head. But the most important one was to talk to pilot before we're going to fly. And I told Ron that I probably will not do that. And he said that he is not going to think less of me if I'm not going to do it. But he really asked me to consider. So as soon as I stepped on the plane, I did ask flight attendants if I can talk to pilots. And they said, yeah, okay, that's not a problem. I said, do people do it? They said that mostly small kids ask to talk to the pilot. I said that I'm still kid in a heart. I made a joke, something like that.
There you go. Yeah.
Right. And they escorted me to the pilot's cabin. And I said that I'm a little nervous. I should be fine. How the flight is going to be. So they told me that I choose the good days to fly. It's a good weather, but to climb up, because we're in Salt Lake City and there are a lot of mountains there. Sure. They said that we're going to climb up and, it's going to be a little turbulent. And that's because they explained to me it's mountains. And then they said it's going to be probably a small storm, something small, or they said weather, something, activity, mid-flight. And that's also what happened. So I'll tell you honestly, it was one of my more turbulent flights. But following Ron's advice and asking pilots about the flight, and that prepared me, because as soon as we climbed up, it was a little shaky and a little bumpy, but I knew why is that. So that made that flight, which again was not my easiest flight, so much better than me just jumping on the plane, sitting in my seat and not knowing why all the bumps are happening. So with that, with following your advice to ask and knowing why it is going on was 1,000 times better for me.
Yeah.
Understanding why.
Yeah. Did you notice the flight attendants checking on you at all during the flight as well? Or was it just being able?
They never came to me. They never came, to ask me how I am. But a few times I caught that look.
Yeah.
In their face, especially one flight attendant, and we're all in masks, so you cannot really see, the facial expressions. You can only see eyes. So once or twice, maybe, I saw her, approaching me and looking at me.
Yeah. So do you remember anything else? What was the biggest thing that was troubling you about the flight, Julia?
This particular time, the most troublesome was that I was not prepared. I thought I'm going to go on Amtrak.
Okay.
So to go waiting, to go from that Amtrak station after waiting for almost 11 hours, and going right straight to airport, that was not an option for me at all. That's why I went to the hotel. It was a wonderful hotel, but I, of course, couldn't enjoy a minute of that hotel because I was trying to get myself together before the flight.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
Julia,
And I was not, as you remember, I would not be able to do it without you.
Julia, I have to know, how much is an Amtrak ticket from Salt Lake to New York? How much do they get for those?
Okay, I'll tell you that. So again, because I purchased that ticket, about 3-4 days before. It was $480 for the ticket from Salt Lake. The train would go through Chicago. It would stop in Chicago first, and I've never been in Chicago, so I was so excited about this trip, honestly. So now again, then it would stop by for 6 hours in Chicago, and then it would proceed to New York, and it was $480, not for the sleeper car, It was for a coach.
I figured.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you take those tickets far out in advance, they are cheaper. But you know what? I only took Amtrak 3 times in my life before that, where I flew many more times than that.
Yeah.
So
you were my hero for that day. You know that?
Oh, you are my hero, Ron. You made such a difference. You talked to me, and it was just I cannot tell you enough. I never was in a situation where I had to reach to anybody to morally support me for anything, but there I was in that situation.
And you deserve the credit because you were really, really frightened and anxious when we got on the phone together there. So would you provide anything that you could say, words of encouragement to anybody who gets anxious like you do about flying? What would you tell them?
Oh, absolutely. I know in my mind that the planes are the most safest mode of transportation, and being on a plane is the safest place to be. But of course, as we grow older, because of our life experiences, we start to feel different about things. But again, we have to remember that it's the most safest mode of transportation, and that the taxi ride to the airport is the most dangerous one, and that we should not be discouraged from reaching out for help when we need that help.
Well, and I'm always reminded of one of my favorite fearful flyers came to the class, maybe 3 years ago, and he had not flown for 45 years, and every year they took many vacations. So his wife would fly out, then he would come behind her, either by train or by car or something like that. And so the last time he did that, he was coming back. He happened to live in Phoenix here, and they were coming back, and he was on Amtrak, and just on the west. Just west of Topeka, Kansas, the train derailed, and tragically, actually, 2 people died in the derailment there. Wow. And he was on that. And so they offered him the option of either riding the bus or flying on an airplane. And he took the bus because he was really rattled after that whole experience. But he came to the class and he flew for the first time in 45 years, and he's been flying ever since. So he said that was enough for him when Amtrak had an accident. So anyway, I don't know if we have anybody that's got any questions, Dieter, or anybody out here.
There's a ton of comments, and I'm just gonna.
Ron, I'm sorry, I have to go.
Bye, Julia. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Yeah. Look on Facebook, because you're going to see a lot of compliments towards you. Okay.
Okay. Regards to everybody from New York. Be well. Hopefully we'll talk again.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Okay. So, well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to all of you that have really sent heartfelt messages to Eric and I with the health challenges that, are in our families. And so thank you for that. Really grateful. And I know you are, Eric, because
yes,
yeah, it's something big. And so the other thing that I wanted to mention, so one question was just simply, of all things, what is the most common of all of the fear of flying types, right? So what's the most common type of fear of flying? And then Dawn, I want to mention that too. Whenever I fly, there's always this fear that I'm about to do something dangerous. I have to keep overriding that gut feeling. And so basically he's also probably going to Austria and Germany, which is kind of cool. So he's obviously wondering what approach is ultimately, a successful approach to that, because he's very aware that it is a process, but what elements can be put into his own process that could be the most, I'm going to say, changing the game for him. So
basically his question is, when he has a thought about the danger, what does he do with that?
Well, I think that's what's coming up, that every time when he thinks about flying or stepping on an airplane, that he's about to do something dangerous, which obviously the danger part is not it's the visceral feeling that comes up for him.
It's the anticipatory anxiety. So I'll talk about that in just a minute. Let's talk about Dieter said, what are the most feared things? Takeoff and turbulence for sure. And then claustrophobia. So very to that. And then if you just put a big umbrella over them, even those are not the biggest fear. The biggest fear is the fear of having that fear. All right. So whatever it's related to, people are worried that somehow they will not be able to handle the emotions that go along with that. We've talked recently multiple times about the fact that the anticipatory anxiety is multiples worse than the actual situational anxiety when you get in it. So and Don's example is a great example of that. So you start thinking about something dangerous happening, and now think about it. You haven't even identified what's going to happen, but you're all bent out of shape about it. And just today, I had a coaching student today, had a person yesterday. I'll read you a quick excerpt. Okay, so here's a woman who did coaching with me, and she got to Hawaii, bumpy but confident on the way over to Hawaii about 10 days ago. Flew a single engine, we call them bug smashers, highly quality airplane, a turboprop from Honolulu to Lanai, because that was the only transportation. Did amazing on that. And yesterday, it was in the morning. She was getting ready to board her flight in the afternoon, coming back from Hawaii, and she said, "Hey, starting to think about hot and windy. I'm expecting turbulence from both elements. Can you help me talk about the weather?" Okay, so I said, so we've done a lot of work in coaching about writing with her non-preferred hand and actually reducing those thoughts that are in her mind to paper. So I kind of prompted there. I said, okay, here's what you do. Get your pen out and your pencil, start writing, starting to feel anxious. I don't like that feeling. I've had it before. Here it is again. It goes away. It doesn't seem to matter whether or not I think about it, but it always goes away. It sucks when it's here, but it goes away. So I just had her, that's what we talked about in coaching. And I said, just get down and start writing. Now, the problem is we don't want to do that. We absolutely don't want to do that. We want to think that it's much easier. I should be able to just force that thought outside my head. You can't do it. Not at this stage for many of you in your fear of flying. So, but again, it's an example. Before she ever even got to the airport, it's starting to build up with her. And that's the nemesis of fear of flying. It's the anticipatory anxiety that precedes that. And it's literally fear of being afraid and not being able to cope with it. And this afternoon, I just had a talk with a wonderful fella. He's a doctor. and his fiance, they're getting back. He marries a girl who grew up in Buffalo. He lives on the West Coast. Right there's the problem. He said, he wants to fly, of course. He wants to support her, visit their family, stuff like that. But he said something interesting, which I thought was a good tagline. He said he has so many friends and relatives that grew up. His dad had a lot of anxiety. His uncle, his dad's brother, died in a light airplane crash when before he was even born. So that adds to the background of all that. But the best part of it was, he said of all the things in his life, despite his fear, he doesn't want to die in the same zip code. So I thought that's a great goal for all of you out there. Do not plan on dying in the same zip code. All right. And you're not going to die on a flight out of your zip code there. So anyway, any other questions, Dieter?
So just to bring it more into focus for Don, it's specifically flying over water, flying over the Atlantic for 6+ hours, and in his mind, nowhere to land. So that, Eric, you flew to Hawaii many times. What can you tell somebody who actually has that fear, where they think that there is nowhere to land? How would you say
I'll do the bullet points so I don't get into my half an hour professor mode. He's actually almost right, except for he missed it by 2. There's 2 places to land. Keep going forward or turn around and go back. And every one of our flight plans is built for an engine failure or an emergency, a divert where we have to go back or we have to go forward on one engine. And it's equipped for other emergencies too. And we have actually built into our flight plan a sub part of the flight plan of what we will go to if we have to do it. So we have an immediate course to fly, altitudes to fly, speed to use for max fuel economy and all this kind of stuff if we have to make the divert on one engine forward or back. And we don't launch without, those are called our ETOPS alternates, our alternate forward and back. And we sometimes have more than one on each end, but usually it's just one on each end. And those are our divert airports. And we watch continuously the whole way across how our fuel's doing, where we are on the track, which way we would go, forward or backward, and how the weather is at our destination and at the ETOPS alternate. In the event we have to divert, we already know that it's okay to go there, that it's not closed for business, that kind of thing. So in a nutshell, without 30 minutes worth, that's it. We have that information right in front of our faces, and we're thinking about it the whole way across.
So every flight you would fly over water was a religious experience because you use that flight plan as a Bible. Exactly, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's the thing that is really outside of the context for many of you, and it's therefore very difficult to normalize. You don't plan on driving or flying on air over a place where you can't imagine how you can do that. The way we avoid landing in the water is we plan never to ever land in the water. And so that requires increases in reliability and equipment, different rules that we operate by. And Hawaii happens to be one of the most challenging in terms of the distance because there are no other alternatives in between there. So anyway, and I swear this, since everybody started flying, half my callers have been headed for Hawaii there. So Don, if you want, schedule a 15-minute coaching session. Don't rely on just hoping that you'll be okay. Do something about it. And anybody else out there, keep those 15-minute coaching sessions coming. If you should try to get one in a time when you really need it and you can't find anything open, just send me an email at captainron@fearlessflight.com and I'll see if I can't open something up for you.
And I'm
okay.
just going to extend that to Gina as well. Gina said that she was getting herself ready, getting psyched up, and and then last minute her travel partner canceled on her. So she was wondering, how do I get back up on a horse again? And I'm gonna just say the most important decision that you're gonna make is the decision that you are willing to get back on that horse again. And like Ron said, whether it's a 15-minute coaching call, whether it's, we have four seasons worth of our weekly live show
Yeah.
That's a free resource that is available to anyone. There are, there's almost 100 blog posts on our website, where you can navigate maybe to more specific questions. So we have a lot of free stuff out there for you. The benefit, obviously, of using the Fearless Flight Kit or something like that, or even the I recommend just getting the Kindle version or the paperback version of the book, because that will allow you to have something tangible, and you can keep coming back to it over and over, and that's how we get better at anything.
People don't suffer for lack of resources; they suffer for lack of resourcefulness. So stick with our online, with the Facebook, and all the support you can get, and don't give up. And Gina, I know her as Elisa. Elisa, call me, write me. I want to hear what happened this week, and I can't wait. So anyway, all right. Well, thanks everybody for showing up again for another episode of Fearless Flight Live. This is Eric and Dieter and I signing off, and we'll see you once again next week for another episode. Thanks a lot, and keep on flying and keep those coaching calls coming. All right.